This is the language policies in South Korea presented by the Watas Ivy, Kitdula Christopher, and Uruga Mariel.
Good day everyone. My name is Christopher Gatdula and I will be discussing to you the languages of South Korea. But before that, I'll be giving you a little information about South Korea. So here's the map of South Korea. South Korea is located in East Asia, on the southern half of the Korean peninsula located out from the far east of the Asian landmass. The only country with a land border to South Korea is North Korea, lying to the north with 238 kilometers of border running along the Korean demilitarized zone. South Korea is mostly surrounded by water and has 2,413 kilometers of coastline along the three seas. To the west is the Yellow Sea, to the south is the East China Sea, and to the east is the Sea of Japan. Geographically, South Korea's landmass is approximately 100,032 square kilometers. 290 square kilometers of South Korea is occupied by water. Its official name is Republic of Korea, with a population 51,418,000 according to 2018 World Factbook. Its official and national language is Korean. The number of established languages listed for South Korea is 4. All are living languages. Of these, 3 are indigenous and 1 is non-indigenous. Furthermore, 3 are institutional and 1 is dying. Also listed is 1 unestablished language. Let's now proceed to the languages of South Korea. The languages of South Korea, naming Chinese Mandarin, English, Jeju, Korean, and there is this Korean Sign Language. Chinese Mandarin, its users are 181,000 and its status is an established language. Second is English, with the users 5,138,000, but it is divided into two users, the L1 users and the L2 users. The L1 users, these are the people who speaks English as their native language, or meaning it is their mother tongue. It has 138,000. And L2 users, it has 5 million. These are the people who speaks English as their second language, meaning it's not their mother tongue. And most of the Koreans who study English do so for specific reasons such as academics, trade, business, and so on. Below 40 years of age, they have pursued English lessons as part of this schooling. Number 3 is Jeju language. Jeju language is located in Jeju Island. It has 5,000 users. Its status is in the level of 8A or moribund. So later, we will find out why Jeju language is in the 8A or moribund when it comes to language status. And the fourth language of South Korea is Korean. It is widespread among all the Koreans. Its users are 48,400,000 since it is their national and their official language. Its status is in the level 1 national. And the Korean Sign Language, though it is scattered, its users are 50,000 and it is estimated assuming 0.1% of the general population. Its status is 4 in the level 4 educational. It is recognized language 2016 Korean Sign Language Act, and it is requires a KSL development plan every 5 years. Promotion of standardization, use of KSL in education, promotion in other areas of life, competency, testing and interpreters. And the law stipulates that the national and local governments are required to provide translation services in Korean Sign Language to deaf individuals who need them. The Sign Language Act of 2016 also became a requirement for there to be signed interpretation in the court. And it is also special sign language instruction courses are available for parents with deaf children.
The language vitality profile of South Korea.
So as you can see in the graph, there is a horizontal axis and the height of each bar. So this graph shows the profile of languages in South Korea with respect to their level of language vitality. The horizontal axis represents the estimated level of vitality. The height of each bar indicates the number of languages that are estimated to be at the given level. So the dark green is institutional from 0 to 4, which means the language has been developed to the point that it is used and sustained by institutions beyond the home in the community. And in the endangered, the color red from 6B to 9, which means it is also no longer the norm that children learn and use this language.
The language status of South Korea.
As you can see in this graph, there are only two purple and one red. So it has also a horizontal axis in the height of each bar. So this graph shows the profile of languages in South Korea with respect to their status of language development versus language endangerment. Each individual language that has an entry for South Korea is included in the profile. The horizontal axis represents the estimated level of development or endangerment as measured in the EGIDS scale, while the height of each bar indicates the number of languages that are estimated to be at a given level. So the purple, there are two, which is the Korean is in the level 1 from national because the language has been developed to the point that it is used and sustained by institutions beyond the home in the community. So since the Korean language is the widespread common language in the Korea, it is included in the level 1 in the called institutional. And there are two in belong language in the number 4, which is the English and the Korean Sign Language. The English because it's for educational, and then the Korean Sign Language is also for educational purposes. And why there is this dying the color red, which is the Jeju language. So it is considered as a dying language because it is mainly understood and spoken by the older generations. And the only fluent users of this are older than childbearing age. So it is too late to restore national intergenerational transmission through the home. A mechanism outside the home would need to be developed. And one of the things that they considered why Jeju language is now dying is it is the local language of Korea. And it is also considered as a Korean slang because it is characterized by a heavy accent containing informal words and phrases.
The history of South Korean language. There are approximately 66 million people who speak Korean in the world, in North and South Korea, as well as in China, Japan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Russia, and US. Korean belongs to the Altaic family languages with Turkic, Mongolian, and Tungusic languages. There are some rumors about its affinity with Japanese language because these two languages are closer to one another. They have similarities in grammatical categories and word formational characteristics. Korea was once a homogeneous society during the Silla dynasty. After World War II, the unified nation was divided into a capitalist South Korea and communist North Korea, and this brought consequences. One of these was lack of communication between two countries. They do not have access to each other's television broadcasts and radio stations. In the early 20th century, under Japanese colonial rule, Korean lost its position as the primary language, but it became Korea's official language again after liberation from Japanese colonialism. The first writing system used in Korean peninsula was the assimilation of Chinese characters into Korean language, which was named Hanja. However, official noticed the destruction of national identity. King Sejong made an attempt at national alphabet and writing system, and the new writing system was called Hangul. It was only at the end of 1980s that it became a full-fledged official language. Prior to the creation of Hangul, common people had remained illiterate. Most writing was in classical Chinese or Hanja, which was compliant with the Chinese grammatical system. The lower classes had considerable difficulty in learning how to write using Chinese characters, so reading and writing had been largely confined to elites. Even after the creation of Hangul, Chinese characters dominated official documents and academic activities for a considerable period of time, with Koreans speaking Korean but writing in Chinese. Chinese characters were referred to as jinseo or authentic writing and considered to be a tool for study and politics, while Hangul was denigrated as vulgar by the literate elite. Hangul was largely used by women and commoners as it allowed them to write their speech as it sounded, so it was dismissed as Iyonmon or vernacular script.
Korean language society, a conflict between purists and traditionalists.
So, after post World War II independence from Japan, purists, under the protection of the Korean Language Society, pushed ahead with the policy of the exclusive use of Hangul. There are four reasons why purists want to make a Hangul only policy. Number one is to celebrate independence of the state. Number two is so that language and culture will ought to never be taken without any consideration. Number three, some Sino-Japanese words are still being used without even using about their Japanese origins. Number 4, the last number is to untangle themselves from Hanja. The Korean Language Society was directed by the purists to pronounce war on Hanja. However, the government did not promptly oblige but rather allowed parallel utilization of the Korean content in Chinese characters for 10 years. In 1957, the Bureau of South Korea passed a determination for the restricted utilization of Hangul and prohibited the utilization of Hanja. However, some issues were raised.
In 1957, the Bureau passed a determination for the restrictive utilization of Hangul and prohibited the utilization of Hanja. This offended both the media and the informed area of society, meaning the educated people. They contended that Chinese characters being logographic meaning that it is a written character that represents a word or a phrase, gave the per user a powerful method for visual correspondence. So meaning because the Chinese characters represents a word or a phrase, it is easier for visual correspondence. And second one is that they decrease an expansive number of homonyms. Homonyms meaning each of two or more words having the same spelling or pronunciation but different meaning and origins. So they contended that having Chinese characters means that they will decrease the amount of words that have the same spelling but different meaning. The third one is that it would deny Koreans of their own social legacy or convention, seeing as their official documents and other academic writings in ancient times were all written in Chinese. And the fourth one is that they will cut them off from the Asian social square to which Korea, China, and Japan all had a place. Language policies. Since the start of the government until the year 1989, Korea did not have any organization or any department that is dedicated to making language policies. What they have is a textbook compilation bureau of the Ministry of Culture and Education, which is in charge of the publication and compilation of educational literature. This poses a problem because it was very difficult for any linguistic policies to be implemented because of the high level of linguistic expertise that is the people in the in that bureau had. When the government reorganized, they created three faculties that work hand in hand in order to formulate and implement language policies. The first one is the National Institute of Korean Language, or NIKL, which primary focus is to study and research policies. The second one is the Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism, which has the Korean Language Policy Bureau on its wing, which oversees linguistic policies. And then a Korean Language Deliberation Council. They deliberate key matters. They are the advisory body consisting of language experts from academic and industrial spheres who deliberate on key issues related to the Korean language. So if there is an inconsistency with the standards of the language, or there is a problem with the implementation of the language policies. They are the ones who deliberate on those and brainstorm solutions for those problems. The Framework Act on the Korean language currently constitutes the legal basis for Korea's language policies. While there were a few laws dealing with matter relating to the Korean language and the characters prior to the enforcement of this act, there were no laws or regulations overseeing all of the matters on language policies. So they introduced this act on July 28, 2005. The goal of the Framework Act on the Korean language is to enhance the quality of people's cultural lifestyle and contribute to the development of Korean ethnic culture by encouraging the use of the Korean language and establishing the foundation for the development and conservation of the Korean language. This Framework Act is very significant because it provides the legal basis for all Korean linguistic policies and research, and it produced basic frameworks for Korean learning and disseminating the Korean language. So basically, this Framework Act is the basis and the foundation of the Korean language policies. So, two of the major implications of the Framework Act on the Korean language is that it stipulates a survey of the native language aptitude of the general public, and it will be conducted on a regular basis. This is done so that they will know if there are illiterate people, and so they would be able to amend the situation. The second one is that it prescribes that policies shall be formulated to assist foreigners in learning Korean. So the Framework Act on the Korean language is also concerned with assisting the foreigners in learning the Korean language. So there are policies that must be made in order for Korean language to be taught to foreigners. The Joseon Dynasty language policy was made by King Gajong. It is an imperial order that all laws and orders should be written in Hangul. This is very significant because for the first time, Hangul was acknowledged since its creation. Remember that prior to this language policy, Hangul was considered vulgar by literate elites and that the official documents and academic writings were written in Hanja. The act on the exclusive usage of Hangul was made when the government of South Korea was established in 1948. Its main objective is that all public documents of the Republic of Korea shall be written in Hangul. Chinese characters can be used in conjunction with Hangul as required. However, the act failed to penetrate into the everyday lives of Koreans and its public literature, newspapers, and even academic publications because they continued to include Chinese characters. So, the exclusive usage of Hangul was only successful when the new generations emerged. So, at present, Koreans mostly use Hangul for writing. In the early period of the Japanese colonial rule, schools continued to teach Korean as an optional subject, but eventually Japan forced Koreans to use only Japanese, even in their everyday conversations. So, the ethnic identity of the Koreans were lost. So, as a part of a project to restore it, a group of scholars planned to create a Korean language dictionary. However, in order to publish such dictionary, it is a need to rationalize Korean spelling and to select the standard language. So, the Joseon Language Society announced the standardized system for the Korean language in 1933 and the collection of standard Korean words in 1936. These are the very first set of language norms for Korea. Meanwhile, the notation of loanwords and the romanization of Korean were introduced as part of language norms in the 1940s. However, the official distribution of these language norms was impossible due to Japanese rule, so they could not spread these distributions because they are still under the Japanese rule by that time. When Korea earned its independence and established its own government, it immediately became necessary for them to establish their own standard language system that could be used in textbooks and other official documents. So, what they did is that they adopted the language norm set by the Joseon Language Society as the national standard. And then, after that, they enabled the language norms formulated during colonial rule to be effectively implemented, and they were partly modified at the end of 1980s. So, the first to be amended was the loanword orthography in 1986, followed by the Korean orthography and the standard language regulations in 1988. The romanization of Korean letters was revised in 1984 and again in 2000. So, in the 1970s, the government has taken the initiative in linguistic refinement. However, while the linguistic refinement movement made dramatic achievements, it failed to catch on because even the proponents of the linguistic refinement have been reluctant to use the newly invented Korean words because they feel that it was awkward and unnatural. The government mandated that state institutions and the media are required to use simple and correct language to ensure that everyone can understand what they mean. Therefore, the NIKL launched its public language division. Its main goal is to ensure the use of simple and correct language in the public sector by replacing loan words or overcomplicated words. They also standardize terminologies and they proofread documents issued by state institutions and they monitor the language use of public service providers. The Korean Sign Language has a different grammar from the Korean language. Therefore, there had not been any systematic research or support for the hearing impaired due to the lack of understanding of the sign language and the difficulty of this. So, the government, in order to support those who are hearing impaired, have made the Korean Sign Language Act in 2016. This act resulted in the launch of a department within the NIKL, which is dedicated to sign language and braille. So, this department is focused on researching and making projects to support and enhance the communication abilities of the hearing impaired and the visually impaired through sign language and brailles.